For centuries, women have carried a weapon so powerful it's reshaped kingdoms, toppled rulers, and driven men to ruin. Not a sword, not an army, something far subtler. Something Dostoevsky, one of the darkest psychological minds of the 19th century, spent his life studying. He saw it in the slums of St. Petersburg. He saw it break men in Siberian prisons. He dissected it in his novels with a kind of terrifying precision. Imagine this: Russia, 1866. Dostoevsky is young, his soul still scarred from a mock execution that nearly killed him. He's sitting in a dim tavern, cigarette smoke curling above his head. Across from him sits a woman, beautiful, calm, with eyes sharp enough to cut. She doesn't argue, she doesn't raise her voice. Instead, she shifts. In an instant, her anger melts into sorrow, her coldness blooms into tenderness, her cruelty twists into pity. Within minutes, she has transformed herself completely. And the men around her? They're hooked. They fight for her. They bleed for her. They destroy themselves for her. This is what Dostoevsky came to call emotional alchemy. It's not just charm. It's not mere seduction. It's the ability to reshape reality through feelings, to take a man's greatest strengths and quietly turn them into shackles. And history is full of examples. Look at Louis XVI of France, a king with absolute power. Yet when the revolution came crashing down, his queen, Marie Antoinette, didn't beg. She didn't scream. She wept, just enough to make him hesitate. That hesitation cost him his crown, his kingdom, and eventually his head. The guillotine didn't kill Louis, his own emotions did. Dostoevsky recognized this same dynamic in the stories he wrote. In Crime and Punishment, Sonia doesn't convince Raskolnikov with arguments or logic. She breaks him open with quiet, relentless suffering. In The Brothers Karamazov, Grushenka doesn't capture Dmitri only with beauty. She reconfigures his love, bending it until it becomes his own self-destruction. Here's the brutal truth Dostoevsky saw. Men are wired to fix, to save, to conquer, and emotional alchemy exploits that wiring. A woman's tears trigger the instinct to protect. Her distance ignites obsession. Her joy becomes addictive. Dostoevsky called it the demon of pity, the compulsion to rescue, even if it costs you your dignity, your fortune, even your life. Think about the last time you saw a man unravel over a woman. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was you. He abandoned his career, his goals, his sanity, all to chase her shifting moods. That's not romance. That's psychological warfare. And Dostoevsky learned this the hardest way possible. In exile, Siberia, frozen wastelands surrounded by murderers and thieves, but the ones who terrified him the most weren't the killers. They were the women. Not because they were violent, but because they controlled violence without lifting a finger. There was one story he could never shake. A female prisoner, weak and frail, managed to convince a hardened criminal to starve himself just so she could eat his bread. How? She didn't threaten him. She didn't even ask. She cried, and like a spell, he obeyed. Dostoevsky would later write, "There is nothing more potent than a woman's suffering in the hands of a man who believes he can end it." Fast forward to today, and the setting has changed, but the weapon hasn't. Emotional alchemy thrives on social media. A single tearful video can mobilize thousands of men. A vague, cryptic post can trigger a flood of DMs from men desperate to fix the mystery. Ever seen someone flip from "I hate you" to "I miss you" in a matter of hours? That's not random mood swings. That's tactical recalibration. Dostoevsky warned us, a woman's emotions are never accidental. They are either a weapon or a wall. And once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. But here's the thing, this is only the surface. What Dostoevsky really uncovered was darker. He found that beneath the shifting moods and the power plays lies something far more dangerous: the tyranny of the unconscious. The invisible strings women pull, often without even realizing it, that can reprogram a man's instincts. This isn't about malice. This isn't about blame. It's about mechanisms: biological, psychological, historical. They've shaped male behavior for thousands of years, and unless you understand them, you'll be played by them. Picture this: 19th century Russia. A wealthy nobleman, respected, educated, logical. He throws it all away, his fortune, his reputation, even his life, for a peasant girl who barely speaks. His friends beg him to stop. His family disowns him. Yet, he cannot. Why? Because she's mastered the oldest trick in the book: emotional imprinting. Every time she withdraws, his hunger grows. Every tear she sheds becomes his wound. Every rare flicker of affection is a drug he can't stop chasing. Dostoevsky captured this perfectly in The Gambler. Alexei, the protagonist, isn't destroyed by love, he's destroyed by intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological trap that keeps lab rats pressing a lever for random rewards. Modern science calls it operant conditioning. Dostoevsky just called it ruin. And here's the key: women don't have to study psychology to know this. They feel it. They use it instinctively. A sudden coldness after intimacy, a wave of affection after distance. That unpredictability becomes the hook. Men, wired for conquest, become like Alexei, not lovers, but slaves waiting for the next crumb of attention.
But Dostoevsky didn't stop at behavior. He saw that this ran deeper, etched into biology itself. Men aren't just conditioned by culture, their very hormones betray them. Testosterone, the hormone of ambition, aggression, drive, has a fatal flaw. It plummets in the presence of female distress. Modern studies back this up. When a man sees a woman cry, his cortisol spikes, his rational brain shuts down, and the instinct to fix takes over. Dostoevsky witnessed this long before neuroscience gave us the scans. In the brothels of St. Petersburg and in the icy prisons of Siberia, he saw it firsthand. Prostitutes knew a single tear could turn a brutal man into a protector. Wives knew that silent suffering could guilt a husband into submission. And in those prison camps, the weakest women commanded the strongest men, not with fists, but with feelings. And today, the same script plays out. Instagram stories, TikTok confessions, dating apps, a single sad emoji, a tearful post, a wave of "I miss you" after weeks of cold silence. These tiny cues hijack the male nervous system. Sadness becomes leverage. Not because women are evil, but because male biology makes it so. But here's the darkest twist. Men don't just fall for it, they glorify it. They romanticize their own destruction. Dostoevsky called it the ecstasy of self-destruction, the strange, perverse thrill of being emotionally enslaved.
Look at Dmitry Karamazov. Grushenka torments him, switching between affection and cruelty. And what does Dmitry do? He doesn't escape. He worships her for it. He begs her to destroy him. "Torment me," he cries. "I live for it." That's not love. That's trauma bonding, the same psychological glue that keeps hostages attached to their captors. And men today, they fall into the same trap. They call it passion when she keeps them guessing. They call it deep connection when they're actually being destabilized. They mistake anxiety for chemistry, chaos for depth.
And just like Dostoevsky warned, there are no stronger chains than the ones a man locks on himself. Why hasn't this been exposed more openly? Because entire systems of power have relied on it. In ancient Rome, the pater familias, the head of the household, was said to hold absolute control. Yet behind closed doors, noble women swayed senators and generals with fainting spells, with tears, with moods. Historians like Tacitus described how a single display of feminine distress could bring down powerful men. In medieval courts, queens didn't wield power through decrees. They used moods, affection withheld, tenderness delayed, disappointment delivered at the perfect moment to steer kings. The greatest trick patriarchy ever pulled was convincing men they were in control, while women quietly mastered the real levers of power, emotional influence. Fast forward to now, and the battlefield looks different, but the weapons are the same. Social media is a playground for emotional alchemy. A cryptic quote in a story? 100 men slide into her DMs, each convinced he's the one who can decode the mystery. On dating apps, hot and cold texting turns ordinary exchanges into a psychological roller coaster. Even in corporate offices, a disappointed sigh from a female colleague can shut down resistance faster than any order from a boss.
And this isn't conspiracy, it's evolution. For centuries, women were denied direct power, so they became masters of indirect control. And men, raised on chivalry and hero fantasies, volunteered for the role of emotional janitor. The truth is, this system survives not because women enforce it, but because men perpetuate it. Every time a man drops his mission to chase shifting moods, every time he apologizes just to keep the peace, even when he's done nothing wrong, every time he sacrifices his self-respect to avoid being called cold or unfeeling, he lays another brick in the prison of modern masculinity. Dostoevsky saw this same pattern in Europe's gambling dens. Aristocrats would ruin themselves financially, not because women demanded it, but because they couldn't walk away from the game. They were addicted to the very dynamic that destroyed them. In his letters, Dostoevsky described these men as drunk on their own degradation, chained not by women, but by their own thrill of self-destruction. And here's where Dostoevsky uncovered his ultimate secret: the only way to truly escape emotional manipulation. He called it the curse of consciousness. The moment when a man sees the strings, recognizes the manipulation, knows exactly what's happening, and yet still obeys. He dances anyway. He rationalizes. He tells himself this time is different, and every time it isn't.
Consider Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. He spends months rationalizing murder. He builds the perfect plan. He convinces himself he is beyond morality. But the moment he swings the axe, his body betrays him. His intellect shatters, his hands tremble, his mind unravels. Why? Because knowing is not the same as mastering. Modern men face the same trap. They study psychology. They watch videos like this. They nod along, convinced they understand. And then, one cold shoulder, one silent tear, one fleeting smile, and they fold. They crumble. They go back. Dostoevsky saw the same thing in Siberia. Prisoners, after decades in chains, would beg to return once released. The known hell was safer than the unknown freedom. And men today do the same. They cling to toxic relationships, to breadcrumbs of affection, to chaos they call love, because the alternative is scarier. Loneliness, uncertainty, the terrifying void of standing alone. Here's the brutal truth Dostoevsky left us with. You are not afraid of losing her. You are afraid of facing yourself. Addicts don't relapse because they forget the drug is poison. They relapse because withdrawal is agony. And that's exactly how emotional manipulation works.
When a man finally walks away, when he finally says, "enough," his body doesn't celebrate, it rebels. Dopamine crashes, anxiety spikes, his brain screams at him, "Go back, return to her, or you will die." And here's the kicker, this isn't just metaphor. Brain scans show that romantic rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. To the body, heartbreak is as real as a broken bone. Dostoevsky knew this long before science confirmed it. In Notes from Underground, his narrator confesses that he despised his mistress. He saw through her games. He knew he was being humiliated. And yet, he couldn't leave. Why? Because he'd rather be crushed by her than face the void of freedom. This is what modern psychology calls withdrawal. Emotional manipulation doesn't just work because it feels good in the moment. It works because walking away feels unbearable. Just like addicts relapse, not because they forget the drug is poison, but because sobriety itself feels like torture. So how do you break free? Not with logic, not with rage. Logic folds when hormones spike. Rage burns out too fast. Dostoevsky's answer was something far darker, far harder. Redemptive suffering, the voluntary embrace of pain to forge a stronger self.
For Dostoevsky, that meant the Siberian labor camp, frozen fields, chains biting into his ankles, years of back-breaking work. But within that crucible, he discovered something essential. Pain chosen willingly can free you in ways that pain inflicted never will. For modern men, it doesn't have to mean exile to Siberia, but it does mean choosing hardship. It might mean 30 days of absolute silence. No calls, no texts, no social media. It might mean brutal physical training until the body screams louder than the mind. It might mean pilgrimages into solitude where the only company is your own reflection. Whatever the form, the point is the same. You must starve the weak part of yourself. You must outsuffer the manipulation. And this isn't self-help. This isn't a neat little life hack. It's destruction. The destruction of the weak man inside, the puppet who dances on emotional strings. Because until you kill that part of yourself, you'll always be pulled back.
At the end of Notes from Underground, the narrator admits something chilling. I was lying to myself the whole time. That's the moment of awakening Dostoevsky wanted us to see. The truth that we aren't just victims of manipulation, we're participants. We tell ourselves we have no choice. We cling to the drama because it gives us purpose. We pretend we're trapped when in reality, we're complicit. This is Dostoevsky's darkest lesson. The women, the games, the suffering, they were never the true prison. The real prison is your need for them. Freedom isn't something you seize from someone else. Freedom is what you become when you no longer need the chains. So ask yourself, are you ready? Are you ready to endure the silence, the withdrawal, the loneliness, not as punishment, but as proof that you no longer need her moods to define you? Because until you can, you'll always remain a puppet. Picture it clearly. A man standing in a crowded room. Strings dangle from his shoulders, his arms, his heart. Everyone can see the strings. He can see them too. And yet he dances anyway, hoping the puppet master gives him one more smile, one more crumb of affection. That is the curse of consciousness, the agony of knowing and still obeying. The only way out? You starve the puppet. You let it die. And when it does, something else rises in its place. Not a man enslaved by moods, but a man who stands alone, unshaken.
Dostoevsky's warning is simple, but brutal. The most dangerous prison is the one you don't want to escape. That's why so many men remain chained. They don't really want freedom. They want comfort.
They want the known hell instead of the unknown horizon. But if you've listened this far, maybe that's not you. Maybe you're ready for more than comfort. Maybe you're ready to stand in the void, to feel the terror of self-reliance and not flinch. Because here's the truth. You are not afraid of losing her. You are afraid of meeting yourself. And until you face that man in the mirror, you'll always trade freedom for the illusion of love. Dostoevsky's greatest discovery wasn't about women at all. It was about men, about how we sabotage ourselves, how we turn passion into chains, how we mistake chaos for love. And his final challenge is the same now as it was in 19th century Russia. Are you willing to starve the puppet so the man can finally stand? So let me ask you, right now, at this moment, what do you choose? To stay in the dance, begging for crumbs? Or to step off the stage and endure the silence until you can stand on your own? If you're ready to go deeper, if you're ready to explore Dostoevsky's forbidden lessons about the unconscious, trauma bonding, and the war for your mind, then type "underground" in the comments below. Because this war isn't over. It's only just beginning.